Another bill that's out there, House and Senate, that has caught my eye, and I know a lot of us who are interested in the savings that could come from it, and that's reforming the Separations Act. I know you've had some thoughts on that in the past about what that kind of reform could do in terms of saving the Commonwealth some money. If you could talk a little bit about that act and possibly how we could look at some reform.
Thank you for the question, Representative. Governor Wolf does not support repealing the Separations Act in its entirety. A straight repeal of the act could entail substantial risk for the small businesses that currently serve as prime contractors and work with the Commonwealth day in and day out. That said, I think we recognize that there are potential administrative efficiencies. There are potential cost savings to be had if both the Commonwealth and local municipalities that are currently bound by the Act's constraints were free to work in a different fashion. And the governor believes that we should do a thorough and independent evaluation of the risks involved for those stakeholders before we move forward with any changes to the Separations Act. We're really quite proud of the efficiencies that we've been able to achieve without any changes.
Well, so that's actually leading into the next part of the question, and I understand, you know, your situation in some ways speaking for the governor, and in some ways not. But I'm encouraged that you'll be a part of those conversations, because I think that you can be very helpful as we look for some of those reforms. And then I'd like to go into the go time savings as well, which I kind of think is where we're moving towards.
Sure.
And the governor has touted those savings since he's been in office. The difficulty for us as a committee and then us as a body is that sometimes we hear about those savings, but we never see it reflected in specific line items. When I think of savings, and you know, I sometimes, my wife and I have this conversation when we're shopping, and if she says, well, you know, I saved $32 because this was $85 and I got it for, you know, $32 less, and I'm thinking, well, but we still spent more than what I anticipated spending when we got here. So maybe our views are a little different on savings. Are these savings actually being reflected as savings, or are we just saving one place and spending more in another? And if it is being reflected in a line item, where could we find some of those?
Thanks for the question, Representative. It's our job at DGS, particularly when it comes to procurement savings, to help every agency live within its means. We don't, probably the best way to put it is this: we've achieved about $74 million within the last year in contract savings by helping our agency customers negotiate lower costs on the contracts that they have, that they need to put in place. The agencies in turn are free to take those monies within the constraints of their own line items and their own budgets, and reallocate those savings. And typically that's what they have done. The savings are real. I think without the savings, we'd be looking at more significant budget increases year over year, as every agency is contending with rising labor costs and rising overall costs.
Well, and if it would be possible to maybe have specific, and I don't expect you to necessarily bring them off the top of your head, but I think it would be helpful that sometimes when there is a situation where, look, we've saved this amount of money, this was a specific example, that perhaps, you know, we could see some of those.
Yeah.
And if you do have a specific example, that'd be great too.
Well, Representative, I'd be pleased, you know, and I would make this invitation to any member of the committee, really any member of the General Assembly. We'd like nothing better than to have you come down and for us to show you all of the details of the way we track savings, procurement by procurement. Beverly has just handed me a list of recent things this year. You know, bulk transport fuel, non-perishable food, janitorial supplies, We are able to identify the previous total spend. We're able to identify the current spend, the annualized savings, and the length of the contract. And those contracts are traceable back to line items in the general ledger. But beyond that, DGS doesn't have the authority, say, to sequester those funds or anything like that. That would be something for the Office of the Budget or for the agency to do.
Well, I appreciate that. And just to clarify, just so that I don't get an immense amount of trouble when I get home, also my wife probably, when we go into like a golf store or something, can say the same thing about me when I come home with a new driver or something and say I saved X amount of money. So just want to clarify that, Mr. Chairman, so that I'm not in trouble over the weekend. Thank you.